This program was designed in compliance with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's Hazard Communication Standard and is a required training for all new employees. OSHA Hazard Communication Standard is designed to protect you against health risks of exposure to hazardous chemicals or substances. A written copy of the Swim Kids Swim School Hazard Communication Plan is located in your facility's SDS binder. The best precaution against accidents in the workplace is having safeguard precautions and following workplace guidelines to reduce and eliminate the risk of exposure to hazards. The objective of this program is to set forth policies and procedures concerning hazard communication, which will enhance the safety and well-being of Swim Kids Swim School employees. It is the responsibility of site leadership to adhere to this program and report accurately. Throughout this training, we will walk through an overview of the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard, where hazardous materials are kept on site as well as where they are used, how to locate and use the safety data sheets, SDS for short, and steps to prevent and reduce exposure to hazardous chemicals. We will also discuss how employees can protect themselves from exposure to these hazardous chemicals through the use of controls, work practices, and personal protective equipment, how chemicals are labeled, and lastly, what procedures to follow in the event of an exposure to chemicals. You can find a list of hazardous materials used on site in the SDS book found at each location. Although we have different chemicals that are used for different things, such as cleaning, pool sanitation, etc., there are two primary chemicals used on site to sanitize the pool. The first is calcium hypochlorite, also known as chlorine, and the second is muriatic acid. These two chemicals in their diluted form are very effective in making sure our water stays clean and clear. However, in their raw form, if mixed, they can become very dangerous, and they must be stored at least 5 feet apart and properly labeled. Safety data sheets, or SDS for short, are forms that identify a particular chemical and its supplier. It will provide you with information regarding physical hazards like fire or reactivity to other chemicals, as well as health hazards such as skin contact or inhalation. The SDS also provides information regarding prevention, steps you can take to work safely to reduce or prevent exposure, or in an emergency, appropriate responses for various situations such as first aid, fire, or accidental release. Each location will keep all SDSs within an organized fashion and will place them in a binder in the pump room and at the front desk for all employees to view at will. A duplicate set of SDS information will be maintained electronically. Some locations may have an additional set in areas where cleaning supplies are kept. SDSs will be reviewed annually to ensure it correctly reflects chemical reformations, improvements, or updates. If a hazardous chemical or substance is received without a proper SDS, there are steps that must be taken to make sure that an SDS for that chemical or substance can be made available. If an SDS cannot be produced, the product should be returned to the supplier. Steps for this type of situation are located in the written version of the Hazard Communication Plan found in the SDS binder on site. Labels and pictograms are used to alert us to the presence of hazardous chemicals and how to properly handle and use them. Each container of hazardous chemicals must be properly labeled with the following information by identifying what the hazardous material is, the appropriate hazard warnings, pictograms and signal words, and the name and address of the manufacturer. Appropriate labels must be on all containers regardless of size. Containers must be approved and contain storage recommendations and how to use or dispense the particular chemical contained in them. Labels and pictograms must be in good condition and legible. Worn and torn labels must be replaced. It is the responsibility of employees to report inappropriate labels to their supervisor. It is the responsibility of the facility manager to ensure that appropriate labels are in place and that replacement labels are available. Small quantities intended for immediate use may be placed in a container without a label, provided that both conditions are met. The individual keeps it in their possession at all times. The product is used up during the work shift or properly disposed of at the end of the workday. The container should be marked with all its contents. Portable containers of hazardous material do not require labeling if the materials are transferred from labeled containers and are intended for immediate use by an employee who performs the transfer. There are certain guidelines set by OSHA and the CDC on how chemicals should be stored. They should be in a dedicated area with proper temperatures and ventilation, away from flames or sources of ignition, and in properly labeled containers. SwimKits takes care and proper precaution in the storage of hazardous chemicals and substances. Pool chemicals are properly stored in the pump room. Cleaning chemicals are stored in the wet storage closet on site. Anytime an employee is asked to perform an irregular or new task involving hazardous chemicals or substances, they should be properly trained and walked through the steps to complete the task safely. Review the SDS for the chemical being used. Give proper PPE to use for the task. Provide correct products and equipment to perform the task safely, and assess risk in the area where the task is being performed. Chemicals should only be handled by pool operators or individuals specifically trained. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, should be worn anytime there is a risk of exposure to chemicals. PPE is accessible to SwimKids employees when working with chemicals and is located in the pump room at each location. There are proper procedures for disposing of chemicals. All chemicals should be disposed of according to the manufacturer's recommendation and in accordance with environmental regulations. In the event you are exposed to a chemical or a chemical spill takes place, refer to the SwimKids Emergency Action Plan to properly handle the chemical emergency. OSHA Hazard Communication Standard is designed to protect you against the health risks of exposure to hazardous chemicals or substances. A written copy of the SwimKids Swim School Hazard Communication Plan is located in your facility's SDS binder. The best precaution against accidents in the workplace is having safeguard precautions and following workplace guidelines to reduce and eliminate the risk of exposure to hazards.